2022 New Year's series, The Challenge. It's a 3-part series, and part 1 is called Balance. Balance. It was the summer that I turned 10 years old that I first read the book Pollyanna. It was written in 1913 by American author Eleanor H. Porter and is now considered a classic of children's literature. It's about a young girl whose mother died and she was raised by her father until he died. And then she was sent to live with her negative, joyless Aunt Polly, who considered herself to be a realist and was committed to social causes. However, if you've never read the book, read it. The book is so much better than the Disney movie that came out so many years ago. Remember Haley Mills? The book is so much better. As I grew older, I began to understand what it meant to be called a Pollyanna. It was a byword for someone who had an unfailingly optimistic outlook. However, unfortunately, in the last couple of years, to be called a Pollyanna has been turned into a derogatory term. Just ask me. I know. Last year, and it happened to be a relative of mine, called me an aging Pollyanna who just wants to pretend that everything is sweetness and light. And this relative is a very educated person. But if you know me, nothing can be farther from the truth. But I believe this ungrateful, unloving, liberal relative of mine flung this term at me for several reasons. And number one, see, she read the book too. And in the book, much more is made of the fact that Pollyanna's father was a minister than in the movie. In fact, he instructed his daughter in what was called the glad game. Now, the glad game was based and is based upon the admonition in 1 Thessalonians 4:4. Rejoice, Paul said, and again I say what? Rejoice. And I remembered how it began in the book, that he developed this glad game. They were very poor, and it was approaching Christmas time, and Pollyanna was just a little girl, and she wanted a doll. She prayed about a doll, but in the missionary barrel, no doll, a pair of crutches. And so she was so disappointed that she got a pair of crutches until her dad told her, you've got to think of things as the glad game. And she wondered what she could be glad about getting a pair of crutches when she wanted a doll. And he told her, just be glad you don't need the crutches. Think about it. And so I know that it doesn't mean that nothing difficult is never going to happen to us, but that our hope is in Jesus Christ. But whether we want to admit it or not, in this day, Satan uses anything he can to turn people away from God, away from truth, away from Christianity. And unfortunately, this is one of the reasons this person, a relative of mine, flung that at me. A second reason is she's an extremely liberal person. And like many liberals today, have been duped into thinking they're the only ones that see inequality clearly. So those that disagree with them are labeled bigots, racists. Oh, anybody heard that over the last year or so? Fundamentalist conservatives, homophobes, transphobes, xenophobes, and there's a lot of other phobes, and religious discriminators. The third reason. Many people have become unbalanced today. And they mandate, did you hear that word? They mandate that everyone must look at things their way or it's no way. We are living in a day, listen carefully, of nihilism. If you don't remember that terminology, look it up. In a nutshell, it means to be a nihilist means the rejection of all religious and moral principles. You see that around anywhere? Historically, now listen, historically, it was the doctrine of an extreme Russian revolutionary party in the early 1900s. Anybody remember a man named Rasputin? Look it up. There's nothing new under the sun. Amen? And so this revolutionary party from Russia in the early 1900s found nothing to approve of in the established order of things, whether it was the social order, the governmental order, the judicial order, the religious order, and as a result, that which was established needed to be overthrown. Are you listening? It needed to be taken down, overturned, and torn apart. In our time, maybe it translates as defund the police, pack the courts, tear down those statues, keep parents out of the educational system, raise inflation, take away all references to Christianity, do away with law and order. How about rewriting history? Take away personal liberties and choice under the guise it's for the good of all. Do you think God separates faith in Him and belief in Him and what's going on around us? Oh, I think He sees it all. And I think those who stand in such places as I am standing need to be able to say, hey, look, there isn't anything new under the sun. But as I was preparing for the sermon today, God revealed to me that one of the key challenges for Americans, and especially for Christians, in the year 2022 will be to maintain or regain balance. Proverbs 11:1 reminds us that a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is His delight. Now, don't think God was just talking about those merchants in the days of Jesus, where Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers, where they had the scales or the balances, and they were putting their thumb on one side, pushing it down. It's not just finances. False balance can be anything that goes on in our lives. In what the Lord showed me, this balance that I'm talking about today is twofold. First, we cannot, are you listening? We cannot permit ourselves to be so unduly focused upon whether it's the mainstream news or whether it's conservative news or the liberal socialist politics and the fear factors that they speak to us about. We cannot become so focused on that we get out of balance. I know people, even Christian people, as soon as they get up, they turn it on. What are we filling our heads with? What are we filling our hearts with? Now, am I saying that we're supposed to be like ostriches and stick our heads in the sand and think everything, oh, Pollyanna, Pollyanna, everything is just hunky-dory? That is not what I'm saying. We know that destructive, demonic forces are at work all around. But we've got to have a balance. Secondly, was it in World War II that they sang the song, Happy Days Are Here Again? Is that where that was? Was it World War II after the war is over? Anyway, do you remember the song, Happy Days Are Here Again? Okay? 2022. That the old year is behind us, the new year is in front of us. Happy days are here again. We can't believe that difficult times won't come in 2022. I think I remember Jesus saying something like, in the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. There's got to be a balance for us. As I was meditating on this topic of balance, I'm a visual person. Anybody else besides me visual? And all of a sudden, this visual came to my mind. As I watched, I saw a little girl on a large wooden swing with thick ropes swing up, 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 and I can't help but tell you, she looked something like I did. And she was swinging up, up, up. And then I watched, and then she came down, down, down. I want to use this visual as 2 points of the sermon and then tell you the remainder of the vision as the third point. First of all, in Luke's Gospel, chapter 5, and so it was as the multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God, he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 boats standing by the lake, but the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, which was Simon's or Peter's. That's not coincidence that he did that. That's not by chance. He got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the multitudes from the boat. When he had stopped speaking, see, God isn't going to be indebted. When he had stopped speaking, see, God isn't going to be indebted to anybody. Do you realize that? He said to Peter, I want to use your boat, your vessel. Listen, I want to use your vessel. I want to use you. But he's not going to be indebted. And so he says to Peter, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. Now we get an inkling of why Peter is a little bit contrary here. But Peter answered and said to him, Master, we have toiled all night and caught nothing. We've been out fishing. We've put that net over many times. It's hard work. And we came up with nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. And when they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their net was breaking. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats. Do you think if they had a third one to come and help, it would have filled that one too? I think so. And it filled both the boats so that they began to sink. I don't think they ever caught that many fish in their life. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I'm a sinful man, O Lord. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish which they had taken. And the little girl that was on the swing went up, 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 up toward heaven. Blessings, blessings. How many have received blessings from the Lord? Isn't that wonderful? I called this swinging high in 2022. But now, let me share something briefly with you that I've shared before, but I want to remind you of something. Way back, several years ago, one of the first women's retreats I ever did was up in Cook's Forest in Pennsylvania. I call them mountains. It's not like Ohio. And anyway, I saw this big, I guess you might call it a hill, but whatever it was, it just went up and up. Well, when you're leading a retreat, you don't have time to go out and do sightseeing. And so some of the ladies were going to go up that big hill and see what was at the top. And they began to speculate what it might be. And I thought, it's got to be a church. There's got to be a church up there on top of that hill, close to God. They came back. Not a church at all. It was a cemetery. A cemetery. A place of death. Well, I know, and here's the connection between the swinging up, 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 and the swinging down, down, down. If you're going to swing up, you better learn to die to yourself. Die to ourselves. How much fun is dying? I don't think it's fun at all. I've been around people, including my parents. Doesn't seem fun. And this dying to self that Jesus talks about and Paul talks about, it's no fun either. I always get a little apprehensive of people that are, and I'm just dying every day. Well, then you and I certainly are different, because it hurts to die to yourself. It hurts to crucify the flesh. Swinging high in 2022, swinging low in 2022. In Mark's Gospel, I'm going to read this, and I want you to be thinking, what are at least two similarities here? At least two similarities. Mark 4, starting with verse 35. On the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." Now, when they left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and the other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, "Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" These were experienced fishermen. It's not like you and I. I mean, maybe some of you are experienced fishermen. Let me just speak for myself. I'm not. I've been up at Lake Erie many times when the storms come up there, and they come up quickly. But what two things can you see that are pretty obvious that are the same in both what I read in Luke and what I've just read in Mark. I think one, they both have to do with ships, right? Both of them. But there's something else. Whether the swing went up, 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 or came down, 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 something else, something very important was the same in both. Jesus was with them. In the good times, in the difficult times. And so, thirdly, we need to open our eyes and see that Jesus is there. That's the last part of what I saw. You know, the little girl went up, 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 and then she came down, down, down. But in both cases, she wasn't alone. I think we just sang about that this morning. In order to maintain or regain balance, our focus is so important. Swinging high, he's with us. Swinging low, he's with us. Hebrews 13:5 says, "For he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." You know, don't ever underestimate the power of prayer. Because I was in a situation, and I've told you this, last year, I couldn't even think, let alone pray, let alone sing any kind of songs for 2 weeks. I had that brain fog or whatever you call it. But other people were praying. Other people. This is so important. You know, people don't want to let people know if they're having difficulty. Why not? Don't you want people to pray for you? I think one of the sad things for me over the years as a pastor is someone in my congregation is ill or sick or dying and nobody calls me. Nobody tells me. You know, sometimes God lets me know things, but it doesn't always happen that way. And other people, it doesn't mean that you're weak. Paul said, when I'm weak, I'm strong. It helps us to know when other people are praying for us. Philippians 4:12 through 13. Now, I'm going to paraphrase this a bit. The Apostle Paul says, I know how to be abased. I know how to swing low. And how to abound. I know how to swing high. Everywhere. And in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and suffer need. Let's read it together, that last line. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Again, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Do you believe that? I've shared this story before, but it came to me. And I want to share it again. If we're going to maintain or regain balance, focus is important. What are we viewing? What are we listening to? What are we taking to heart? There were two men in the same hospital room. The one next to the window was a Christian man. The other man was very negative and very sad. In the process of the days that they were together, the Christian man began to share what was going on outside. The window faced a park, and he would describe to the other man in the bed that was very negative, he would describe children laughing and playing basketball and swinging on swings and sliding down slides, and parents letting their little ones play in the fountain. The man began to look forward to the Christian looking out the window and sharing what was going on outside. In fact, it became the high point of his day. The Christian man died suddenly. And although the other man was very saddened, he wanted to move next to the window, because what the Christian man was describing to him helped him so much to get out of his negativity. And so, sure enough, later that day, they moved him next to the window. But not much to his surprise, there was no park. There was no children. There was no fountain, no games. The window faced a brick wall. Not only did he find that the man was looking at a brick wall, but he also found something else. The man didn't see anything. He was blind. But his focus was on Jesus. And that's why he could be positive. And that's why he could talk about the good things. That's why they called him a Pollyanna. He learned balance. He didn't see as he saw as God sees. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that doth so easily ensnare us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. And if you're going to stay balanced, you better be looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher, the source and supplier of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. The challenge? Maintain your balance. Regain your balance. And understand that whether we swing high or we swing low, he doesn't leave us nor forsake us. And don't forget, He's the way maker. He can make a way